Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new teen therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Oh, hello, David. That was so sedate of you.
Well, this is always one of the happiest times of the week for me, when we get a chance to do a podcast and shoot the breeze and hang out and hopefully bring some good healing and inspiring messages to our many fans.
Yeah, it's a highlight of my week too. And I want to welcome everyone to episode 205. This is on the cognitive distortion of should statements.
Yeah, and I think you've got a couple really nice emails to read too.
I do. This was about our CoronaCast 6, which was entitled Love Story Part 2, The Surprise Conclusion. And Marshall wrote to us and said, I love to think that everyone can have their own love stories. Personally, I feel that everyone wants a little love in their lives, be it a fairy tale meeting or just meeting that special person. I loved this story. It was truly beautiful. Great job, everyone. No, that was so sweet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And yes, a nice love story. And this one had such a beautiful surprise ending and a beautiful photo. And now I think they're just a couple of lovebirds, and they were on the verge of thinking one of them was going to die. And Taylor gave us so much with those two Corona casts.
Right. It was great working with Taylor. And this is another one. This is an endorsement about, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you also write a blog in addition to the podcast. And it's a free blog that anyone can, how do they get it?
Well, you just go to my website, feelinggood.com. There's tons of stuff there. There's free classes. There's a depression class. We're about to post a free anxiety class. They can click on the blog button. They can click on the Feeling Good podcast button. There's probably 1,000 free goodies there. They can click on the free chapters, the unpublished addiction chapters from my new book. Oh, by the way, I have to give a quick promo for my new book, Feeling Great, which is available now on Amazon, available for pre-order. So if it'll come out in mid-September, but
that's exciting.
If you order it now, it will help it, because on September 15th, all the pre-orders will go to, it's waiting toward the bestseller list. So
nice.
If you're so inclined.
I ordered my copy last week.
Oh, did you? Thank you.
I did. I want
Well, you're
one.
going to be getting a free copy.
I want to buy one too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, here's what Tara wrote about the blog post that you did on. You titled that blog post "Secrets of Self-Esteem #2," and she wrote, "Great article. It never occurred to me the opposite of negative distortions could be so damaging. I guess everything in excess can potentially get you in trouble. It was very interesting."
Oh, thank you for that. What was her first name?
Her name was Tara.
Tara. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Yes, that was an article I wrote on the positive distortions. We also did an early podcast on the positive distortions. There's a mirror image. There's 10 positive distortions that are the mirror images of the 10 negative distortions. So you've got positive all or nothing thinking, positive mind reading, blaming other people for a problem in your relationship. That's a positive distortion too, because you're overlooking your own role in the problem. There's positive emotional reasoning, like you're gambling and you win some hands or at poker or slot machines, and then you say, oh, this is great, I just feel like I'm on a winning streak, and all of a sudden it's 30 minutes later and you've lost $100. And because positive emotions can be positive distortions can be just as destructive as negative, maybe even more destructive. They lead to racial bias, prejudice, they lead to conflict, anger, hostility, war, violence, narcissism, mania, addictions. That's the whole territory that results from the positive distortions. So they're much harder to treat because the positive distortions make you feel great. If you say, "Oh, my religion is better than your religion," and my skin color is superior to your skin color, and I'm kind of a superior person, you get euphoric. We kind of like judging other people, looking down on other people, and thinking we're somehow better, and that's the very energy that can lead to a lot of cruelty and suffering in the world. But it's harder to get people to give up these positive distortions because, unlike negative distortions that make you feel worthless and horrible, the positive distortions make you feel superior and euphoric, ecstatic, and pleased with yourself.
Do you know if you and Fabrice did a podcast on positive distortions?
Early on, I think we did two podcasts on distortions at least, and one on the negative and one on the positive. They're real early. You can find them on the list of Feeling Good podcast with links right on the homepage of my website. So, and there's a search function there too. People are always asking me, how can I find something on OCD, or how can I find something on shyness? And you just go to any page, the home page of my website or any page, and there's a search function off to the right, and you type in any word you want, like panic attacks, and you'll get beautiful podcasts and blogs and all kind of free and I think really excellent resources on these topics. One other quickie, I was telling you earlier today, Rhonda, that yesterday, Monday, now that's yesterday as in June 29th. Today we're recording on June 30th, and this won't be out for 6 or 7
until
weeks.
August.
Yeah,
right.
Until August. But yesterday was our largest one-day download ever. It was the Secrets of Sex Appeal with Matt May, and how to date successfully, and how to overcome your shyness and stuff. People really love that one. And
well, that's a really popular topic, huh?
oh yeah, that's yeah. We did with you. Yours was incredibly popular. All of yours have been incredibly popular when you did some personal work, courageous.
Well, personal work is always popular, but talking about love and dating and how people can be happy in an intimate relationship is, I think people are attracted to that topic.
Yeah, so we're going to try to inundate you with love podcasts. Also, we've got a fabulous upcoming live session, another mind blower. I didn't know we'd be able to use it. It was with a colleague who I've never met, but I've worked with him through his very popular blog on relationships, and I'd been I was on his podcast several times talking about how great the new team therapy is, and then he kind of said, "Well, I've got an issue, and could we work on it?" And I said, "I'd love to." And we had a really awesome session which he recorded. It was very personal, so I didn't know if he'd publish it on his blog, but he published it. Now he said we can publish it on ours, so we'll be working that up soon. I think the live sessions have so much teaching potential because you can see how this technique actually works. And then this month, July, we've broken all of our download records too. We'll be well over 130,000 downloads for this month. I can remember when Fabrice and I started out, and when we got a few hundred, we thought it was beyond belief. It was so great. But it just keeps going up, and we thank all of you folks for making that happen. If you just send links to my the Feeling Good list of Feeling Good podcasts on my website, you can just go there and grab a link and send it out to people, or I guess you can like these episodes or forward them to people in your network. And because if they're depressed or anxious or struggling with relationship problems, they could find the podcast helpful and sometimes even life-saving, as so many people have found. And we don't have any funding or anything like that. It's just all you're our marketing arm. So you've been doing a great job, and thank you so much. And just
Yeah, thank you.
keep doing it. Well, today we're going to have a real shouldy broadcast for you, and forgive my crude humor there, and it's not a very original joke, but it's on should statements. And that's the next to the last distortion. The last one will be on another killer topic, blame, self-blame and other blame. And then should statements, you've got self-should statements and other should statements. But the should statements really go back, in terms of being something irrational and destructive to the time of the Buddha 2,500 years ago and probably earlier. But in this modern era, the real champion of should statements was Karen Horney, who was born in the 1890s, and she was a feminist psychiatrist and one of the earliest cognitive therapists. Although she was a psychoanalyst, it was really all about cognitive therapy. She was championed the idea of self-defeating beliefs like the love addiction, basing your self-esteem on being loved, or basing your self-esteem on how much success that you have. And she talked about the fact that a lot of us have an ideal self and a real self. And the real self screws up. But the ideal self is perfect. And so when we screw up, we start beating up on ourselves. I shouldn't have screwed up. I shouldn't have made that mistake. I should be perfect, or whatever we're telling ourselves. And that's like a denial of reality, thinking if we pound on ourselves hard enough and long enough, we'll eventually turn into this Superman or Superwoman that we imagine ourselves to be. And
so we're kind of scolding ourselves?
Yeah, that's right. And if you look up the word should in the big, thick Webster type multi-thousand page dictionary, it goes back to an Anglo-Saxon word, S-C-E-O-L-D-E, scolda. So you're kind of scolding yourself when you use should statements. They have a real moral sting to them. But
aren't there some things we really should do?
Well,
you're talking about a moral sting and scolding, but some things we should do.
Absolutely. There are three valid uses of the word should in the English language. One is the laws of the universe should. So if I have my pen here in the air and I drop it, it should fall, which it did, because it's obeying the laws of the universe. So
the law of gravity.
Yeah. So that's right. So that's one type of should. And then there's the moral should that goes back to Moses and the Ten Commandments. How does that work, Rhonda?
Well, like thou shalt not kill.
Right.
And there are other laws that are based in morality and ethics that we should follow.
Yes, that's right. And so the moral shoulds, that's perfectly a correct use of the word should. And then there's the legal should. How does that work, Rhonda?
Well, there are rules that we have to follow as part of society, like you shouldn't drink alcohol and drive. And those are the sort of commands that we should follow.
Yeah, because if you do, you'll get a ticket and you may get in an accident and get killed or kill someone. So those are legal shoulds. But when people come to us with depression and anxiety, they're saying things like, "Oh, I'm shy and I shouldn't be so shy." Most shy people think that way, and then you double your trouble, because not only are you shy, which itself isn't much of a problem, but then you're ashamed. You see, you're shoulding on yourself. That's the way Albert Ellis, the New York psychologist, used to put it. He was another huge champion of shoulds. And he believed that almost all emotional suffering, like Karen Horney believed, was due to shoulds that we direct at ourselves, or at the world, or at other people.
That's a pretty broad statement.
Yeah, and like anything, it's an oversimplification, but there's a heck of a lot of truth in it. And then the antidote, of course, is to accept yourself, and we'll talk about some of the techniques you can use, the specific techniques. But most people, including myself for a long time when I was in my perfectionistic stage, don't want to accept themselves. They don't want to give up their perfectionism because you feel, and it's true in part, that your perfectionism, your self-criticisms help you. And in fact, before you can get rid of a should statement or any cognitive distortion, it can be incredibly important to do positive reframing and to see what the should statement tells about you that's positive and awesome, and also what are some benefits to you of beating up on yourself with should statements. And there are a lot of very real benefits of perfectionism and being self-critical and being demanding on yourself and punishing yourself when you don't live up to your own goals and expectations.
Well, you said there were three kinds of should statements: directed at self, others, or directed at the world. And I'm wondering, are there, how thoughts, push us toward our feelings? Are there certain feelings connected to each one of those three types of shoulds?
Oh, great question. Yeah, that's there are. I wasn't thinking of that, but you're exactly right. Now, if you have self-directed should statements, like a patient of mine who's was trying to help her brother who had been depressed all of his life, and he'd become a heroin addict in Vietnam, and she was trying to help him and save him, and one day he finally committed suicide.
Oh no.
And she had had a telephone call with him that day, and he was very demanding and could be kind of a nag, and she was busy, and she kind of brushed him off, and then he killed himself. Right outside of her window, actually.
Oh no.
Her apartment. And then she was at the time the most severely depressed person I'd ever seen, and her thought was, I should have known he was suicidal that day, so it's my fault that he died, so I too deserve to die.
Oh.
I can't imagine anything more brutal or devastating than the suicide of a loved one, a son, a daughter, a brother in this case. It's just one of the most horrific things. And I've had just so many patients, with should statements. I think we've talked about Karen, and I'm going to be talking about her in my upcoming Google talk, although by the time this comes out, my Google talk, which is in late July, will already have happened. But, her daughter asked to go out and play after dinner when she was 12, and Karen said, sure, yeah, it's okay, because she'd gone out every night for years to play. But
right. That was their pattern, right?
Yeah, that's right. But on this particular night, some boys snuck up on her and with a high-powered pellet rifle and shot her in the face. And it went into her mouth. It exploded on one of her teeth, and she required years of surgery and psychotherapy. And Karen had been suffering for 9 years when she did her session. At a recent psychotherapy intensive I did, and she volunteered to do a live demonstration. And her thought was, I never should have let my daughter go out and play that night. I've ruined her childhood, and I'm a bad mom. I'm a failure as a mom. And she'd been suffering intensely because of a should statement. So shoulds directed at yourself cause guilt, shame, and depression. Shoulds directed at other people cause anger and rage and resentment and hatred. Like people who are anti-Trump, and I'm going to balance this so it's not political, but they will tell themselves they shouldn't believe in Trump. Trump's a liar. Trump is a fraud. Trump is hateful. They should be able to see through him. And then you get angry when you have those kinds of thoughts, and you get frustrated, and it's an outward directed should, like, you should be the way I want you to be. And then they do the same thing, saying, oh, all those lefties out there in California, they're no good. They've got a bad value system. They shouldn't be like that. They're permitting abortions, and they want all these people from other races to come into our country and take over, and they shouldn't be like that. And so these shoulds directed at other people have fueled anger and wars and conflicts for hundreds of years, thousands of years. That's a tough one. And then you can have shoulds directed at the world rather than at other people, like
Well, it shouldn't be raining on my wedding.
Yeah, it shouldn't rain. I'm having an outdoor wedding, and it shouldn't be raining on this day. Or you get a new piece of software, and they're telling you, oh, this is user friendly. Like, it just happened to be today. I was trying to shrink a little image of my new book so I could get it posted, and it was too big for the software. And so I went online and said, oh, this is the simple thing to shrink, any image, 1, 2, 3. So that looks easy. So I clicked on, it says click here to paste the image here that you want shrunk. And so I uploaded my picture of my book, and then all it showed was like maybe the center inch of the book, a little tiny piece of it. It was crappy software. It was the worst piece of crap. It absolutely didn't do the only thing it was claiming it was so great at doing. And so I was kind of saying, this shouldn't be so screwed up, like
it shouldn't be so hard.
Yeah, right. So those are world-directed shoulds. That causes frustration. Now, what's a hidden should? That's a fourth kind of should.
Could that be something that you like, I shouldn't ask for help?
Well, that's an overt should. That's a stated should. But sometimes you'll have a negative thought that doesn't have a word like should or ought.
Well, instead of I should, like maybe I can't ask for help.
Yeah. A lot of people have thoughts, I shouldn't be weak, I should be strong. That's a kind of a self-defeating belief that a lot of people have.
So if someone said to you, I have to be strong, you would imagine that you could see that there's a hidden should in there.
Well, I would say that's an anti-hidden should. When you say I should always be strong, I should be strong, a lot of people will actually say that should. But an example of a hidden should that I've given on a previous podcast was a woman who, I guess a great one was, Marilyn. When she learned she had terminal cancer, she went into the most severe imaginable depression. And she had thoughts like I've lost my belief in the afterlife. I've been duped by religious leaders. And a lot of thoughts that made her rageful and made her ashamed and made her intensely guilty and intensely anxious. And what she was really telling herself was a hidden should is I should be more religious. I shouldn't ever lose my belief in God. I should always believe in the afterlife. And also my teachers shouldn't have been claiming that all these things are true when we have no way of knowing that they're true. So there were a lot of shoulds going on there. If anyone hasn't heard those podcasts, you can search for Marilyn on my website and find those podcasts. That was also, May was my co-therapist. That was another magical, healing, fantastic therapy session. So anyway, we've talked a little bit about the kinds of shoulds. And we've talked about the valid shoulds and invalid shoulds. You see, when Marilyn is thinking, I should be more, I shouldn't doubt the existence of the afterlife, that's not a legal should, because it's not illegal.
Right.
It's not a laws of the universe should, because you're not violating any laws of the universe if you don't believe in the afterlife. And it's actually not a moral should either, because there's no moral law that says you should always believe in God, you should always believe in the afterlife. In fact, virtually all great religious leaders going back thousands of years have all described experiences where they doubted the existence of God. They doubted their own faith. In fact, that's thought of as a necessary step on the road to enlightenment. It's called the dark night of the soul. But she's really kind of punishing herself. Do you see where she takes a very common thought, like I don't know if God exists. I don't even know what that word means sometimes. And then she's saying, I should not have these doubts. And so she's creating tremendous pain for herself. Another interesting thing about that in passing is that the cancer was not the cause of her intense depression, panic, rage, guilt, and shame, and hopelessness. It was all of these distorted thoughts beating up on herself. And that's a great thing, because we can't make the cancer go away, but we can certainly crush those distorted thoughts and help her or anyone get back to joy and laughter and a sense of pride. So, what techniques?
So, what
we
techniques?
Have? Huh?
I said the same thing. Oh, the semantic technique.
Yeah,
I love that.
Now, the semantic technique, it sounds weak, but it's actually can be surprisingly helpful. Or if it doesn't work for you, you use another technique. But instead of telling yourself, I shouldn't or I should, you can just substitute, it would be preferable if. For example, I once had a chance, I used to collect world paper money. I don't anymore, but for many years when I was younger, it fascinated me. And I had a chance to buy some rare Chinese banknotes at a time when no one was collecting Chinese banknotes. And there were about 200 of them, and they were all super rare. And they were in brand new condition. They came out of the archives of the American Banknote Company in New York. And they decided to sell their archives. And I had a chance to buy like maybe 200 of these for about $20 a piece. But I was low on money. I didn't have a lot of money. And I thought, oh gosh, this is a little risky, and I'd love to own them. But I told the fellow, no, I don't want to risk spending.
Well, that's still $4,000.
Yeah, and it was an awful lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And so I passed on it. Well, I was looking in a book that came in the mail, because they still send me these auction catalogs, and I saw one of those notes, like I would have had 200 of them. It's estimated for $20,000 and up.
Oh gosh.
Because China made all this money in the last 20 years, and all those things have just gone through the roof. And it would have been so great to have bought them, and then I could go and pick them up now out of a drawer or something and handle them and see how beautiful they are. Think all that money I had made. So if I say I should have bought them, then I'll get all mad at myself, and I'll get anxious and guilty and get all upset. But I don't do that. I say, gosh, it would have been great if I bought them, but I didn't. And, life goes on, and I've got a great life. I'm not going to should on myself.
Yeah.
Do you see? And that's an example of the semantic technique.
So you're replacing the should with kinder language.
Yeah.
More accepting.
Yeah, it would be preferable if, or I wish I had, or, it would be more desirable to blah, blah, blah. And I personally, that's very helpful for me, but it has to be coupled with self-acceptance. And as I've gotten older, it's become much easier to accept my flaws, because when you get to, I mean, I'm going to be 78 in a couple of months, and
Oh,
I screw up in things all the time now. I mean, I always have, but I'm just aware of it. So I just accept everything, and makes life so much easier than should. I should be able to run faster. Well, why should I be able to run faster? I'm kind of an elderly guy. So I'm lucky I can walk. And I call what I do slogging, not jogging. Slow jogging.
slogging. I love that word.
Yeah.
Well, then you also have down here the Socratic questioning method.
That's a good one too. Um, I had a colleague who asked to go on a Sunday hike, and she comes from a very high functioning Silicon Valley family, and she and her husband are super brilliant, super high achievers, and very lovely people as well. And they have, just to disguise a little bit, two sons, and one is brilliant, and the other one, and they're young kids. The other one has a severe learning disability, and she described going to Parents' Day at the school, where you find out how your kids are doing, and the children had all of their paintings or drawing or whatever it was posted on the wall, and then she saw her son's that was massively inferior to what the other kids were doing, and she suddenly felt ashamed of her son. And then she told herself a loving mother shouldn't be ashamed of her son, and she was feeling incredible guilt and feeling bad about herself as a mother. And then she told me too that sometimes he has temper tantrums when he's trying to learn, because it's so hard for him, and then she gets annoyed with him and has the thought he shouldn't be giving in to these temper tantrums. And then she also tells herself, I shouldn't be frustrated with him because he has a learning disability. And these should statements were just creating tremendous pain for her, because she's a lovely person, and I'm sure a lovely, giving mother. She and her husband do everything for their boys. But we all get cranky sometimes, at least I do, and I've even heard through the grapevine that sometimes you do, Rhonda. Although that was
sometimes I do.
Impossible to believe.
It's hard to believe, but sometimes.
And even our beloved Jill Levitt, who is being the first Jewish person to be nominated by the Pope for sainthood.
I second that.
Yeah, that's right. She is just fantastic. But she often tells us how she'll, get cranky and yell at one of her kids or something like that. We all do this. So anyway, my colleague wanted help with what turned out to be should statements, and so I used the Socratic method. I said, do parents sometimes get frustrated with their kids, or sometimes get angry with their kids, or sometimes feel ashamed of their kids? And what's the answer to that? Yes or no? And she said,
yes.
Oh, yes, that's true of all parents. And then I said, and what are you? And she said, I'm a parent. And I said, what follows? And she said, I guess you're saying I will sometimes get frustrated, angry, or ashamed of my kids. And I said, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then she kind of saw it as a light bulb. And then if you're willing to accept that, rather than beating up on yourself, you can use the semantic method. It would be desirable if I never felt ashamed of my son, but being human, I sometimes will. But I can remind myself, too, that I love him, we support him tremendously, and he's really growing and learning and developing really, really well, given the severity of his learning disability. And then
so you're talking about with the Socratic questioning method, you either alone or with your therapist, ask these kinds of questions that lead to the inconsistencies
Yeah,
that are embedded
that's
in the
right.
negative thoughts?
Illogic of what you're telling yourself, and it went back to Socrates, who used to do that in ancient Greece. I guess that was his method of philosophy, that asked people these questions to get them to see that what they were telling themselves was baloney. Like, I don't remember the specific examples, but I know they believed in these Greek gods. They thought they were real things, like Zeus and whoever they were, Pluto or Plato or whoever these. I think Plato was real and Pluto was a dog, but
Yeah.
but they had Zeus and all these things. And
Venus.
yeah, and then he would ask questions like, "Well, have you seen these gods?" And what. That type of thing, and the people in Greece got so ticked off at him, they condemned him to death.
Ooh, yikes.
They didn't like it, but you can use that technique to tell yourself, ask yourself questionings like, you gave an example of a patient of yours who got into thinking nobody loved her. And then you use Socratic questioning, which is like examine the evidence. Who are the people who have loved you, and who are the people who you've got conflict with? And she suddenly discovered there wasn't any evidence that nobody loved her. A lot of people loved her, but she had conflicts with some people, and that's something you can learn to work with using the five secrets.
And then I'm imagining that there's another useful technique for the should statements, right?
Yeah.
You had mentioned it earlier, the acceptance paradox.
Yeah, and I'm see if I've got an example of it, and I don't have an example of it, but that's the thing that's been so helpful to me. That's really a step into enlightenment, is to accept yourself as a flawed human being. And some of us, we don't want to do that because we think we're special, or we're supposed to be special, or we have to be special. And if we're not special, some terrible thing is going to happen to us. And that type of thinking may very well be the cause of your depression and your anxiety.
Because if you feel like you need to be special and you're actually not that special, then you can be really depressed about it.
Exactly. Thinking, oh, I'm not good enough because I don't earn enough money. I'm not famous enough. I'm not successful enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not loved enough. And you beat up on yourself for all of your shortcomings. And when you let yourself die, the death of the self, where you accept the fact that you really are kind of ordinary. And you focus on the moment, on your life, on who you're interacting with right now, and how fantastic that can be to be open with people, to share with them your feelings, and for them to be genuine and open with you. You suddenly realize that life is filled with all kinds of chances for joy. And that is kind of a miracle, that life is kind of a miracle. And you realize, and I've said it many times, that when you give up this need to be special, that's when life becomes special. And
yes,
I had to learn that so many times, so many different ways. But when I was younger, I didn't want to accept things. I kept fighting, swimming upstream, and it took a lot of pride in the fact that I did that. But it caused me a lot of misery and as well as difficulties getting really close to people. And now I just find that self-acceptance and the death of myself is the death of yourself is really more like a rebirth or a celebration. It's not like a funeral. It's like an incredible celebration. We'll do more on acceptance in the future. It's a hard thing to grasp at first.
Wow, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
are we done on should statements?
I think we are done on should statements.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
I think
people.
you made a lot of really good points.
Yeah, I think the one thing maybe we didn't emphasize enough is that the first step in crushing any should statement is to first list what it says about you that's positive and awesome, and some of the benefits of it. Like it shows that you have high standards. Your high standards probably motivate you and have helped you accomplish a great deal, and on and on and on. And you can list 10 or 15 overwhelming positives about your should statements and all of your negative emotions. And then when you see how great these things are that are causing you so much suffering, then you can raise the question, well, maybe I don't want to give that up. But maybe I should continue with these should statements and the shame and the guilt and the anxiety and the rage and the depression. And that's really the most important and most vital step toward change, because then you might say, yes, I don't want to give up these should statements. In which case that they're working for you, or you may decide that there's a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of pain as well. And I think I'd like to try a new approach, and it's been so helpful for me because I find that I do my best work, say in psychotherapy or writing or anything, when I'm not trying to be special. When I'm trying to be ordinary, when I write show notes, I sit down and say, I'm going to see if I can do a really terrible job on this. I want to write a really crappy draft.
No, you don't think that.
Yes, I do.
You think I want to do a crappy job?
I absolutely do. I sit down, let's see if I can do a really terrible job. I'll just type out some drivel, and then I send it to you, or Maeve, like from yesterday's podcast, and there's a little, you could change this a little, but other than that, it's great. And I find that when I'm just like being with people, just being in the moment, not trying to be special, that's when life becomes special. It's also when I can do my best work. When I'm with someone in therapy, if I'm trying to be great, they get turned off. But if I'm trying to empathize with them and understand their suffering and be very focused on them, they totally love it.
Yep. Wow, that's really neat to learn about you.
Say that again?
Well, I said that was really neat to learn about you.
Oh, yeah. It's like a little trick I use when I go out jogging every day. I try to jog more slowly than the day before. I try to break records of slowness because that takes all the pressure off me, and so it's not so much resistance to going out in the heat and slogging along.
I'm going to try that one next.
Yeah. Then I come home, my wife says, how was it? I say, just a little below average, and she says, she shouts, great, that's good enough.
That's so wise of her.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Rhonda. It's just always such a joy hanging out with you.
Yeah. And thanks to all our listeners. Yep. And until next time.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.